Hey guys, welcome back. We're going to talk about codependency and trauma. And I want to talk about this because I think it's important for you to understand what happened that caused the codependency. And more specifically, I want to talk about how trauma really forms and then creates all of these problems that we have, whether it's anxiety or depression or codependency, et cetera, et cetera. And I know a lot of people, when they talk about healing from codependency, they want kind of like a list. Well, tell me step 1, 2, and 3, and what do I have to do to not be codependent? Because clearly I've attracted someone who's really toxic and I've created or I've experienced a lot of suffering and pain. And that's really the thing that's kind of triggering this, probably why you're watching this video actually. But I think it's important to understand the past. And here's the reason why. Knowledge is power. And so if you understand what happened, then you can also understand why you're still doing what you're doing today, which is continuing this dysfunction to continue. So here's the thing with trauma. Trauma happens from either a really big catastrophic event, or it happens from a lot of tiny little things that you experienced over the course of a period of time. And those tiny little things added up to be this story that you hold in your mind, this trauma, right? So it's either like one thing that happened, it was so drastic and so crazy and painful that it stuck with you. And because it was so big and so quick, you weren't able to process it then and there, which means that now you have post-traumatic stress, which means after this traumatic event happened, it was so quick and disruptive and crazy that I couldn't emotionally deal with how I was feeling. And so now as time has passed, I keep having these like things that are coming up that are from this event that I experienced or saw or witnessed. And these little triggers are kind of coming down. And that's my opportunity to really like deal emotionally with this one trigger that allows me to heal from this big traumatic event. So that's kind of like one way trauma starts. The other way is when instead of this big thing that happens, these little things happen throughout the course of a period of time. And when they happen, again, you're not dealing with how you feel, or you're not dealing with what's really going on here, because either you're completely unaware as to why this is happening, and you don't know how to deal with it emotionally in order to soothe yourself and reprogram that situation through repetition, right? So knowledge is power, here we go. And because those things happened continuously, they just built basically and grew and mounted into this traumatic event. So those are the only two ways that trauma happens. Now, when a trauma happens, whether it's a big one or a little one, it is going to be your response to that thing that causes the trauma to really kind of like sit in you. So a trauma is something that on some levels, whether catastrophic or little, that you deem to be a threat. You deem to be something that you need to worry about. So look at it as, when we think of trauma, we always think of like war or combat, or I was abused, or I was raped, or, you witnessed a horrific violent act. So something, the big trauma that could happen that you're like, oh my God, life-threatening really quick, car accident, life-threatening really quick. But the little things are more of the things of someone withholding love, someone not listening to you, someone invalidating you. And now when those things happened, especially in childhood, and because you didn't understand why mom and dad or grandpa or auntie ignored you or invalidated you or told you that you're fine, even though you felt like you weren't because you were sad about something, or when someone made you feel like you weren't good enough by comparing you to your brother or your sister, or when dad was never able to verbally tell you that he loved you or embrace you, and mom was always drinking and worrying about her own self. So when all of those things happened and you didn't have enough logic to be able to process what was happening, and here's the thing, even as an adult, when things happen to us, when we're in a situation with a spouse or a friend or a family member, whatever, and they do something that's invalidating, that's hurtful, that's whatever, that's gaslighting, that's manipulation, and we don't see it, we still as an adult, even though we have more logic than we did as a child, we still don't see it to be able to understand, oh, that had nothing to do with me. That was actually about you. So you were still creating the same patterns that we had in childhood, which is not being able to process what's happening in real time, right? Logically understand what's going on, emotionally be able to validate those feelings that we're having, and emotionally be able to soothe ourselves, and also kind of like reaffirm that like we're not the problem, that we're okay, that we don't need their validation. So because we're not doing those things, those little traumas that you get into when you are in a narcissistic relationship, an abusive relationship, you're taking on, and those things are kind of like chipping away at you. And as they chip away at you, especially in these situations, as they chip away at your self-esteem and your self-worth, you begin to become dependent on this person giving to you what you need in order to actually feel good inside. So I need you to validate me. I need you to be my cheerleader. I need you to be on the same page with me, because you're not giving me what I need. And guess what? I'm not giving me what I need. So a codependent person and that kind of programming and that emotional wound only exists because for so long someone didn't give you what you needed, but you also didn't learn how to give yourself what you needed. And so you're basically empty. And so you're looking for things outside of yourself to give you validation, to tell you that you're enough, when all you need to do is just give it to yourself, and you won't require it from someone else, and you won't be dependent on other people. You also will not allow what other people do and say to have any effect on how you feel about yourself. So that means that no matter what someone does, what someone says, that's not going to chip away at your self-esteem. When something starts to chip away at your self-esteem and your self-worth, and you're severely, in this feeling of lack, and I'm not okay unless you love me, or I believe everything that you say, you are extremely dependent on needing someone. Now, when that happens over a period of time, now, especially if you're dealing with someone who is abusive, which guess what, you're gonna be a prime target for, now you're gonna start getting the gaslighting. Now you're gonna start getting those periods where you're like, I feel like I'm going crazy. I feel like I'm wrong. You could become depressed, you could become suicidal, because you're in an environment where you're not loving yourself and you don't understand what that means. And so you're just dependent on someone else giving you something. And when they can't, you're going to just eventually get to an empty point. So it's so important with codependency that instead of having the mirror focusing on everything outside of you, for you to flip it and learn how to like affirm yourself and love yourself and soothe yourself and validate yourself. And that's why self-parenting, and what I talk about all the time on these videos, on the podcast, on my coaching, and my programs, everything is about learning the process of how to take care of yourself on these levels. Now, for anyone who is interested either in working with me or taking any of my courses, I always link everything down below so you can go check that out. But in terms of the trauma that you experienced that essentially gave you this codependency, you have to really be able to take an inventory of growing up, how did you feel neglected? And if I ask you that question, you'll be able to answer it. I'll say, hey, look, let's talk about mom for a second. Let's just think about, in what ways do you feel like mom neglected you? Now, this doesn't mean that she's a horrible person and that she did the worst job ever. But if you're honest with yourself, in what ways mom didn't do a good job? And what would you have liked to have seen from her? What did you need from her that she wasn't really able to give you? And vice versa, same thing with dad. If you kind of sit and you look at your childhood, and I think when you, again, knowledge is power, when you understand childhood development, when you understand what does it mean to be a healthy parent, and what was I supposed to give my children, or what is a parent supposed to give their children in order for them to have high self-esteem, for them to feel good about themselves, for them to motivate themselves, for them to be able to self-soothe themselves. A parent has to teach a child how to self-soothe. You don't just leave a child in a crib and let them cry it out, because they're not learning how to self-soothe. All they're learning is, when I'm sad and I'm upset, no one's here for me. So learning about childhood development and what you were supposed to get, it'll give you a little bit of an idea as to, wow, where did everyone drop the ball and miss the mark here? And I think even if you don't dive into that stuff, if you just kind of take a step back, you'll be able to look at the people that were around you that had the most influence over you, and be able to see where they dropped the ball, because intuitively you felt the disconnect. You knew, I wish mom would have validated me a little bit more. I wish dad would have been able to just give me a hug and tell me that like I'm good the way I am, and not try to make me be something that I wasn't. And I always felt like I wasn't good enough for him. So you'll be able to all day long be able to spit out those stories. And usually those are the things, not usually, most definitely, those are going to be the things that you do to yourself now. Because guess what? That's how you were programmed. So I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to subscribe down below and catch me every week. We're starting to do actually 2 videos a week, which I'm so excited about. I just am so happy that you guys love these videos, that they're helpful. I get so many beautiful messages every single day, whether on social media, and if you're not following me, check down below for all of the links for those, TikTok, IG, things like that, our Facebook group. I think it's great to just, you gotta get this information out there to help people, and when you truly start making a difference in people's lives, it feels absolutely amazing. And if you are interested, we're going to be running a masterclass come September. So if you are interested in becoming a life coach, for years I have gotten this request, and I think now's the time to do it. And I'm so excited to help people start their businesses, especially with the world that we're living in. It's changing, and you've been through a lot. And if you can help someone in any way, shape, or form and have a business from that, you will have financial freedom and fulfillment. And I'm just so excited to help people that are interested in doing this as a career. So if you're interested, I'll link that down below for the masterclass, and I'll see you guys next week.